At the end of the day, it's just like, does this make the story better, or are you overthinking it? But the reality too as well is like, depending on the type of shoot you're on, there's time constraints, right? There's budget constraints. Thing like, when I have any downtime, I try to go grab coffee with the people that I admire, like people that I see their work. I'm like, man, this guy is putting out some really good work out there. I'd love to connect with him, you know? And I can pinpoint a lot of those to getting on set with them and eventually, you know, turning into a job, or it was either a passion project and then it turned into work.
Jesus Martinez, welcome to the Story Arc Podcast. Glad you could join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
So it was, I think, a year ago that I saw some of your work on YouTube and Instagram. And I saw you kind of doing like event posts where you were complaining a little bit about some of the reach or the connection, like putting a lot of work into putting yourself out there, but not seeing the return on it. Like whether it was posting a YouTube video, not getting a lot of views, or Instagram or whatever. But at that time, I was really working hard at my channel as well. And I felt like sort of the same pain. I could empathize with that. But since that time, you kind of, vented a bit, but you dug your heels into the ground. You stuck with it, builded more of a network. I think you've expanded your business as well. And it seems like you're doing well. Doesn't mean you don't have any obstacles or challenges, but I find it really inspiring to have moments where you feel down or you feel like, this isn't working out. And then you stick with it, you follow through with it, and you start, seeing that compounded interest of giving, whether social media or growing your network. And so I wanted to have you on the podcast today to kind of talk about that. So, Jesus, tell me, what were you feeling? I guess maybe it was a year ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like some time ago that you seemed a little bit depressed with connecting with people on social media. What were you experiencing at that time?
I think it's just a combination of, like you said, of like not knowing if this is even worth the time at some point, right? But I can definitely speak for it now, where I literally got a job with like Ticketmaster. I was on a project, I DP'd some stuff, and it all came through some Super 8 I shot and posted it on YouTube. And other people that just reach out to me from like reels and stuff like that. So yeah, I think like the biggest thing as well is like when my biggest presence on social media was active is because I'm slower at work, right? So I'm here, not a ton of work, trying to make this content and then hoping this actually turns the gear, but it like slowly does pick up. And the inquiries come through. I find you on TikTok, I find you on Instagram. I had like a full package from someone in I think it was like Switzerland, somewhere in Europe. They were just looking for an FX6 packet in San Diego, and they started looking up FX6 rigging. My YouTube video popped up. They were going to be shooting in San Diego, so it's like everything lined up. So it's like those like small opportunities that do pop up, and with that, you end up on different crews, you end up connecting with different people, and every time you're on a set with a whole different crew, it's a great opportunity just for networking, because if you come in as DP, gaffer, everyone there at one point is going to need you.
Yeah. What was the mindset then from going from like, I don't know if there's any value in posting or being on social media versus actually seeing the return on that, or just changing your mindset with that and just kind of like sticking with it? Was there like a pivotal moment, or just saying, you know what, I'm just going to stick with it?
No, I think it's more of like sticking with it, because my background, I started in the stills world. Like I wanted to do commercial photography and only photo. Like I loved photography. Mm-hmm. And I was until the gear started turning where a YouTuber talked about doing video. So then I started doing video through YouTube. So YouTube for me was like my film school, kind of like I forced myself to film something, to edit it and make it and post it on YouTube. And I had already seen that kind of grow the network essentially like throughout the time. I think it's just like the whole burnout feeling, like it's almost like inevitable, especially if you're working in the production field. Like I can tell you right now, I have like 3 projects in the back burner where as I'm growing, I'm trying to like send this out to an editor, right? I'm trying to like stop less of that so I can get back on the grind or find the YouTube editor. But yeah, it's hard to juggle the whole YouTube scene while still trying to work, as a full-time filmmaker.
So you had people in your DMs, maybe people emailing you, calling you, just networking with people on set. Where did you find like the best result with getting leads or getting work, getting jobs?
It's like kind of hard to like quantify, but I can speak of like moments where I know it's made a difference. And like one of the biggest like pivoting moments in my career, right when I started posting a lot on like TikTok, I connected with this guy. His name's Jacques, and he just so happened to be the owner of this agency called Raindrop. So I kept making my content. He followed me, I'd follow him, and we were just like engaged in that. And I feel like that basically opened the door to this filmmaking world, because they ended up hiring someone or having a position open. I ended up applying and I got into the door. So I can connect my growth to social media in very like various parts of my career so far. But yeah, I mean, it's a grind. It's hard to maintain an actual flow
Yeah.
of content.
Yeah, especially when your work is, people will hire you based off of the aesthetic, the beauty of what you can
Mhm.
create. So it takes work to do that. Whereas like 90% of the rest of social media platform or content creators are just creating stuff with their phone and just coming up with, they're still being creative with it, but they're just shooting in their car. Whereas you're like taking clips and, grading them or making them look better,
Mhm.
doing that in an edit. I feel like maybe I'm just complaining, but it's like the people who should be the best at content creation should be the videographers. But I think it's because we over perfectionize everything, like we want everything perfect, that it's hard to post, and so you don't want to put your work out there. But how do you keep that mindset of like just getting over the hump of perfectionism?
Dude, and this is gonna be like kind of like uh, for people that learn filmmaking on YouTube that started with like the McKinnon and all that,
Yeah,
Natties. And I remember that was one thing. I think it was like done is better than perfect. So that's
yeah,
kind of like been the mentality. And like you said, like, yeah, it's hard because what one thing that I have done or like has helped me be like, okay, I need to get more content out is shifting the content to kind of like a creator versus what will happen if a client sees this, or how
mm,
can this content get me hired, right? So that's been kind of like a shift in terms of like the production and the things that I'm trying to put out there, where it's like I want this content to A, be able to teach something, but B, be able to be a source where if someone sees this, the quality's there and people are gonna be like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. I don't know, shooting documentaries or shooting this. Let's hit him up.
yeah,
We have a San Diego production. But it is like hard to break away from like the quality, right? And it's just like I feel like the reels have kind of helped that a little bit. The vertical content has helped being able to break away from like everything has to be perfect to more like behind the scenes shot on an iPhone, or let me just put a mic on the iPhone and talk to it and make some
yeah,
content out of this. But yeah, it's definitely hard because there is that step, right? Where any other field, I feel like you could just make videos on your phone and it's totally fine. But in our
yeah,
field, there has to be at least a mix of that quality. And that takes time. Like right now, I have
yeah.
this light here, I have a mic down here, I have a camera over here, I have a slash in the background. So this takes
Yeah.
like an hour to set up alone, right?
Yeah, yeah. And only because of the industry we're in. Otherwise, we would just be doing this like with a webcam or whatever and just call it a day, you know?
Yeah, and
But
people
we
would
want it,
love
we
it.
got to make it look good, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, the difficulty with
So,
where we're at.
what about like your schedule with content, or like do you schedule things out or think about I want to post every single day, whether a reel or a story, or 3 times a week? Like, do you have like a goal in mind when it comes to your content strategy?
It's been like all over the place, honestly. Like I've tried to stick to to like an actual schedule, and like when I saw the most growth on my YouTube was when I was doing 2 videos a week.
Mm,
But there comes the difference, right? Where YouTube, yeah, I'll get some ad revenue if anything, but it's like
yeah,
it's nothing. It's pennies, right?
yeah,
Versus I can take on a project or get hired on whatever, a commercial doc, whatever spot, and it's way more money. So like it's kind of hard to balance, right? Or see the worthwhile of this rather than trying to be strategic with it. So it's hard, honestly, to get back on that schedule, but I am trying to get back on it. And ideally, I would have someone managing that content now at this point, because getting harder to juggle through everything.
Yeah. How would you recommend for someone, when they're first starting out, they're going to have to manage that. But as they get a little bit more momentum, where do you go for looking for someone to help manage that? Like a VA, or what are you looking at for that?
Well, I mean, first off, if you're starting off and you're not busy, you have to make all the content, like pump content, which that's like I said, when I was like on my downtime, that's when I'd be making the most content because it only takes one person, even the views doesn't matter. Out of those 10 views, if one person needs a filmmaker or, a gaffer or whatever that content you're making, you're going to get hired. So I see the value in it is huge. It's massive. But the turning point now, growing as a production house, right, or freelancing, I'm still juggling that side. So I'm in the process where I don't know if I'm looking to bring someone full time into my production house that can work around all that and we can manage that, or if I'm potentially pushing all my editing out to actual people that edit, and then I just worry about my social content, right? So I'm kind of in the middle of that, just trying to figure out
Yeah.
what's the right move right now as far as like the growth of business and
Yeah.
continuing social, because I do see the value in social content, right? YouTube stuff and all that. It's just made a lot more network and a lot of bigger projects, I can say, that
Yeah.
came through that.
So there's a lot of other areas, like I don't know if you get ads on your phone about, grow your video business to 7 figures or do this or that. There's different ways that you can, I guess, different marketing strategies, whether it's your website SEO, Google ads, Facebook ads, cold email outreach, LinkedIn outreach, social media content, networking events. All of those have validity. But if you could pick one, what would that be?
I think, like, from my point of view, I think social media, if you're barely starting, it's making content on YouTube, on Instagram. If you already kind of got a foot in the door, right, or have some form of the network, the next step is the network, because the network is huge, especially in this film space, because more than half the time you end up hiring the person that you have more fun with on set rather than the person that's more knowledgeable, right? Because if it's a better client experience for your own clients having that person on set rather than the person is super talented, right? And that only grows with the network, right? Because when I go on shoots and I come in as a gaffer or I come in as a DP, I also take on production projects, right? So I'll meet a new grip, I'll meet a new PA, a new cam op sometimes. And when I need him, oh, I met this guy, he was really cool, I'm going to go ahead and hire him. So I'd say like to start, and so people can also like see that you're hungry, because there's a difference from like the DMs that I get. Hey, I would love to get on your set, and I go check, they have nothing on there. It's like, cool. But other people, I can see they're grinding, they're posting stuff. It's like, dude, hell yeah. Like, would love to connect with you, and I'll get you on as a PA, and maybe we can work on something as well, So definitely, I'd say the first thing is putting content out, just content out, exploring the world of film, and then getting on sets.
I think relationships are so important, or they're not valued as much. I mean, I think we say it like, oh yeah, I get all my work word of mouth or referrals, and then we brush it off like, but really I've got this strategy of cold email outreach, and I'm paying a guy, $500 to $1,000 a month to reach out to these people and build this prospecting list or whatever it is. But I think like I heard a friend say once that he has these relationships that he's not cashing in on quite yet, but he thinks of it as like putting it on a stovetop in the back burner and just putting it on a slow simmer or a low simmer, and letting it just kind of warm up a little bit, and just having connections and networks and friends, and I don't think it's not always transactional. I mean, it is, because it's a business, but you can make some of the best friends of your life with the people that you work with in any industry, but definitely like if you're a filmmaker, like those people that you work with as a crew, you're going to find some great friends there, and they're going to refer you, but then even clients as well, like making great connections with them, bringing the value to the table. So talking about that with building a network, where do you find like if you wanted to either A, hire someone, or B, get hired, where do you go for that network? Like, is it a Facebook community group, or is it like another filmmaking community? Like, where do you kind of find some of those networks?
I'd say I'm pretty big right now on like Instagram and TikTok. And
Okay.
right now it's like, it's kind of like hard to kind of like pinpoint it with where I'm at right now because fortunately I'm busy. But the biggest thing, like when I have any downtime, I try to go grab coffee with the people that I admire, like people that I see their work. I'm like, man, this guy is putting out some really good work out there. I'd love to connect with him, you know? And
Yeah.
if typically it's like, let's go grab coffee. And then from there, like I've had people reach out to me. Like I always say yes to coffee if I have the time as well. People reaching out to me, and I can pinpoint a lot of those to getting on set with them, and eventually, you know, turning into a job, or it was either a passion project and then it turned into work. So for me, the biggest thing that I do is Instagram, like DMs or following their work and being real about it. Like if I like someone's work, I go and comment on their stuff, you know,
Yeah,
and
that's good.
try to build that relationship. And it might be like a month or two before like I'm even available, or even they as well. One of us reaches out and says, hey, let's grab coffee. You've been putting out some cool
Yeah.
stuff or stuff like that. So it's definitely being genuine. Like I used to hear this stuff too about networking. Like I went to a networking event when I first went freelance. Man, it was the like awkwardest, weirdest thing ever. And it's like everyone's there kind of trying to make money, right? Everyone's there trying to like network, but it's just like a weird vibe. And it just doesn't have to be that, right? It's ultimately
Yeah.
friendships. Like that's like the biggest thing. Cause like, and like just going off of that cup of coffee, right? You know that person, you see how they are, you see if you vibe with them and what their goals are. And I think that eventually just leads to being at like a similar level, right? Seeing each other as more like collaborative partners, right? Rather than, I don't know, you're like down here or something like that. Or I don't know, there's
Yeah.
just a lot of difference in making like a genuine connection with someone. And maybe that person's just like, I'm going to help you push your career,
Right.
right?
Right. So it seems like social media is like the gateway drug into more of a network or a connection or a relationship. And I think a lot of people might just think of it as that barrier of entry. At first, they just think of it as, oh, I got to put content out, and then they don't engage on
Mm-hmm.
social media, like, comment, DM people. And that's a great way or great advice is to connect with people via social media instead of just posting. So you're posting so people can see that online portfolio, connect with you, warm up that interest. Like, oh, Jesus seems like a pretty sweet guy, and I like his work. This is awesome. He's putting it out there, and then you comment on their stuff, and they're like, wow, now hey, now we're friends, you know, and now we
Mm-hmm.
could work together or do something, and you never know where that's gonna go. I think sometimes people feel maybe the mountain of friction or conflict, like the mountain of like, oh boy, I gotta be where Jesus is at this point. Like that's gonna take so long to do. What would you say to someone like that?
The mountain never gets closer. Like
Never gets
the goal keeps moving. Like I can tell you, my goal was if I could just do this every single day, right? If I could live
Yeah.
off of this, right? Then you live off of it, and it's like, man, if I could be shooting commercials, like bigger commercials, and then I get into an agency, and then I meet these guys. I'm like, man, this guy's a full-time DP, like gaffer, like he's doing great. Like if I could do that, and then you start doing it, it's like it just keeps changing. And it like
Yeah.
now I'd love to connect with people shooting like feature films, you know, see how they're
Yeah.
doing it, or see what they're doing. And I bet like if once I get to that point, then the next mountain is farther.
Yeah.
But again, it's all network, it's all relations. Like you can't do this
Mhm.
alone. The biggest thing is you
Yeah.
can't do this alone. Like I literally just shot this spot a couple days ago, and I knew from the beginning I needed a crew because I do a lot of one man band or with a gaffer or maybe two person, right? And it was like the results I walked away with, I was so much like more happy with it than doing super slim crew. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like you want to get to the next level, to the next spot, you need to network with everyone. Like people at your
Mm.
level, people that are where you want to be. Like that's the biggest thing. That's gonna be the biggest push in your career.
Yeah. How do you stay in love with the craft without burning out?
That one's like hard because you get to a point where you're doing this every day, right? Or full time, right? And the projects that pay aren't always the most exciting, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say what kind of keeps me motivated is like as soon as I have some free time, I'm trying to push like music videos, even if I'm not getting paid. Like if having that network and someone's like, hey, I want to make this stuff, like cool, let's do something really fun. Like I want to make this really creative. um I also have like a new client that I've been working with, and they're like, it's been like night and day with them, where I pitch them an idea. Like they're like, hey, we need to make this video. I'll come up with something, send it, and they're like, we love this, let's make it. I'm like, oh my god, this is so cool. Like they're actually taking my creative into consideration. It's not like the typical corporate video, like we just want this, we
Yeah.
just want that. So I'd say like the biggest thing to stay creative is being creative, right? Because your
Mhm.
work, the initial work at least, is not necessarily the most creative stuff. Or even half the time, right? When you get on a commercial, the script is already done, the shot list might have already been done, they already have a camera in-house maybe that they want to shoot on. Like they're,
Yeah.
your job is literally just get there, turn on the camera, tell
Yeah.
people to put lights here and there, but there's already a look that they want as well, so you can't even go too moody, right? So
Yeah.
it all falls down to like your passion projects and what you're doing on your free time, I'd say.
What that client that you referred to, pitching them some different ideas, what sector are they in? Like what type of niche industry
they're
are they in?
they're in the medical field. It's like
Okay.
like a nonprofit. I think it's a nonprofit, but it's like
Yeah.
a foundation for medical field.
Yeah.
So
Do you
yeah,
find a specific niche that you're either A, more interested in, or B, that you want to brand yourself towards?
not really. Like I love shooting docs, especially if I'm the creative behind it, and like I drive the interview, the narrative. Like I love that stuff. I love commercials when it gets really creative. I don't really care what the commercial is. I mean, yeah, I care what it's about, right? But I like
Yeah.
anything can be super creative, or you can get that angle of like, you can do some really cool stuff with it.
Yeah. The last still or video that I saw you post on Instagram, I think was of the Baja
Oh
1000. Seems
yeah.
like an interesting project because a lot of people know about that race.
Hmm.
Uh, but to shoot there, I'm sure you've shot other things that are more interesting or more cool. But tell me about either how you got that project or what was your role in it and what's the end result for that.
So the Baja project is actually, it's a perfect timing, I feel like, because it's a passion project basically.
Okay, cool.
And originally it started with a friend of mine. His name's Diego de Alba. He does a lot of concert stuff, and he's been breaking more into commercial world. I do a lot of music videos with him. Like I'll drive like 4 hours up to Bakersfield, to with my grip and lighting van, and
Yeah.
to help him create these music videos. But he originally pitched this concept of a travel trip to a brand. He got like tires or something, and then he came to me. He's like, "Dude, we should do the Baja and let's pitch this." So he pitched it to a ton of people. No one funded it. They sent free stuff, which is great. But ultimately, I had recently done a job actually with with Turo basically, and I had my buddy Diego actually. I had him on that for it. I was on another project, but he himself was able to connect with the creative team, and the talk was about them needing more creative stuff, right? Like regular folks or so, or like creative people,
Yeah.
right? But just more creative than the typical UGC stuff. That they're
Yeah.
after that, right? So my buddy's like, let's film this whole Baja trip, and let's make this our next pitch. And now we have something to show. So I'm
Uh,
out for it. And essentially, like, and it was like, I had I was already booked to DP a project like the day when it started, but it starts at night. They kind of do all the pre-runs and stuff that day. So I literally finished my project. I hopped up on Facebook because this was in Ensenada. I'm in San Diego. So I'm like reaching out to my close family and friends. I'm like, I need to ride to Ensenada, and I need you guys to pick me up in San Diego because I was going to meet up with my buddy Diego. So it was like a whole thing
yeah.
to make it happen, but it worked out. It was fun, man. It was just like so much dust everywhere. My FX6 was totally destroyed after this trip.
Oh, wow.
My lens is gonna need some cleaning. But yeah, it's a passion project where we're able to be creative and chase a narrative. We're still working on the final edits, but we did a lot of stills, a lot of video, and we did a lot of like dedicated product video for the stuff that we got, so we could also share that. So hoping to push more content like that and be able to
Yeah.
pitch this to brands.
How long was the shoot for that one?
It was like a two night 3 days.
Okay. How do you feel like, it sounds really cool, by the way, I can't wait to see it, but
Mm.
how do you feel like you balance the passion projects and then the real work projects, and also like your time with family? Because I feel like sometimes it's hard to, convince the
Mm.
family that, I've got this passion that I'm going to do. Okay, well, how much are you going to get paid for it? And it's like, well, this
There's
isn't a
nothing.
paid project. So you're just going to go out with your buddies and have fun. So how
Yeah.
do you find some good principles there of like balancing that, or
There is no balance.
no
Like
balance?
the reality is there's no balance, to be honest. Like I was lucky I wasn't booked, and I was lucky I was busy the weeks before, right? Regardless, I was like, you know what, if you're gonna make it happen, let's just go ahead and do this. I think it's looked at more as an investment, right? And it's
Hmm.
investment of time. Even I spend money on gas, right? We spent money on food and all, but I know this is an investment, just like YouTube, just like anything else where we put in the
Yeah.
time. It's not right then and there, but the returns for it are, 10x, 100x
Yeah.
on a project like that, right? Because getting a pitch like that sold, it can only lead to more of that if it works out, right? So there's that. And I mean, the family, that's like the hardest part, which I just heard that podcast with Carlos Stigliano. I don't know if you saw it.
Okay.
I think it was Lawrence, where
Yeah.
he talks about being a cinematographer, right, and shooting the Joker, and the balance of family is basically not
Yeah.
there. And it's like that's the truth is, like right now the goal is we get like a whole overlanding setup so we can all go camping now with the fam, and my kids are super excited to go do that. Um,
Hmm.
but it's difficult, honestly. Like right now I work from home, and I'm able to get those gaps to spend more time with family, or try to
Yeah.
plan more trips essentially. But yeah, it's hard to get a balance in this space, especially if you keep trying to go to the next step.
That's the hard part. Like it's all like you said about the mountain. There's always another
Yeah.
step.
And it's like I could stop right now, and I think I'm at a comfortable place. Like we
Yeah.
can build from here. Like I'm good, I could manage this. But I don't want to stop here. Like I know there's more that I can achieve. I know there's more than we can grow, and that's where it gets right the hard part.
Right. I think it's good to have those conversations with your significant other, your partner, your spouse, like to talk about you'd say, "Hey, our family is like the most important thing." And but it's the lines can get easily blurred when it's like, "Oh, I'm going to do this project for you guys. It's all for you," right? It's really hard to convince everyone of that. But I think like it one, like if you're listening to this, it comes through longevity. Like, so you have to figure this out. You can't figure this out always on day one, like in the
Mhm.
relationship. You're gonna have to figure it out over time. But then two is just finding. Not everyone's relationship is a carbon copy.
Oh
Like
yeah.
what may
Definitely.
work for your family doesn't work for my family or for Lawrence Schur's. It's everyone is so different, and so you can't also be like you got to be content with what the expectations are within your family too. You can't be complaining like, "Oh man, they're on set. Like, why can't I go on set?" It's like you just have to, like, you have a family, and that has to be valuable to you. And I think you really have to set the boundaries. And then once those are like the parameters are set, then you can have fun. Then the stress is kind of not as much there. But then also, like you mentioned, casting the vision to your spouse, to your wife is like talking about like this is where we want to go. And
Yeah.
these are the things that have to happen. And there's some sacrifices, but I want to go with you together on this. Like, what do
Hmm.
you feel comfortable with? How's this going to work out? Whatever. And I feel like those are good conversations to have.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not just you, especially once your wife, is involved, your kids are involved. It's a whole different ball game, right? And it's not like I'm doing these every other week, right? As well. That's
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, I haven't done anything to push this. This is, I think it's like the first actual like trip that I go on alone on something like this without the fam, which is actually kind of where we're trying to gear it to. Where our talks are like, let's do the next one with the family. All right, let's get the
Mhm.
family involved, and that becomes a pitch, and maybe that gets something. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely a hard balance. But at the end of the day, it's all a sacrifice, right? That whether you sacrifice it right now or you sacrifice it later in time, right? It's like how fast do you want to get to it?
Yeah.
Because it's, and I tell this to tell myself this all the time, right? Which is this it's not gonna be like this forever, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
budgets get there, the time is there, then editing is outsourced at this point. I'm free from editing now. So then it's like I think that's kind of like the move where like as you grow, you can't just grow by yourself, even like as a production house or trying to move in the filmmaking space, growing with bigger projects, right? You're gonna need that producer. You're gonna need that PA. You're gonna need another cam op eventually, or even like stepping away from touching the camera and just directing, which is like kind of the hardest part of just accepting like certain things
Yeah.
you just cannot operate and direct, especially when
Yeah.
it's a bigger project, right? So
Right.
yeah, it's finding that balance and eventually getting to that balance as well, but being in
I
talks
think
with
it
your partner.
definitely exists though. Like a lot of people, at least from from the way I grew up or the way I saw it, was it seemed like contentment or satisfaction was this pipe dream that would never come true. Like it never
Mhm.
really existed. Like, oh, you can try to go for money or for a job title or this or that, and you'll never be satisfied. And I think there's definitely a lot of truth to that for sure. But I also think if you have an idea, like a goal, like we talked about, the mountain is always moving. I think that's part of human nature. And if you took that away from human nature, then it's not so much about satisfaction as it is about discovery or exploring. So the reason why we want to go from one mountain to the next, because it's not because we're dissatisfied, but we're curious, we're interested. What's on the other side of the hill? Like what's over there? But I think when it becomes damaging is when you're completely stressed out, your health is bad, your relationships are bad, and that you're depressed. That's when it's a problem. And I think you got to take time to enjoy the journey, smell the roses along the path, and look back at like, wow, look where I started from, several years ago when we just started. I was doing this project, and now look at where we are now. Look at the, maybe the bank account it isn't a reflection of your happiness, but it could be like, man, we have a house, we have a couple cars, like our family's in good health. I'm getting clients. Like there's a long way to go, but man, I'm very blessed, And I think that it's good to have those introspective conversations with yourself, with your spouse, and just to talk about that and celebrate the wins for sure.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like it's always insane when you're able to like take a step back and even though like there's people that are way ahead of you, right? But when you look at where you were a year ago and you see where you are right now, it's like, man, this is insane. Like I dreamt of having an FX6, right? I dreamt of owning one 600D, and now I have multiple like things like that. That like, and this is like the material stuff, but like I can take my daughter to school in the mornings. I can pick her up. I can do so many more things that I couldn't have done when I was working full time, beforehand.
Yeah.
And it's just, this is like some of the reward that you at least get. And yeah, things change and progress. And it's, if you just get stuck on this part, like the production and everything, it's like incredibly hard, like mentally and everything. Like, it's just, that's why it's like taking a step back and be like, okay, something has to change. Okay, what am I doing wrong? What can I do to change this, right?
Mm-hmm. So getting back to the artist part of things, though, with the dissatisfaction there, what part of your journey as an artist or as a filmmaker that you want to grow in? Not business aspect of things, but just as either a DP or a storyteller or a technical aspect that you want to grow in.
It's so hard because there's like multitudes, like even being a DP, like there's so much more to learn, right? New gear comes out and all that, and gaffing, like as a gaffer, like I meet these older heads and it's like, man, these guys are on another level. Like they just know some tricks that are just like crazy stuff, right? So I love it. I love every day I'm on set and I'm able to work with someone.
Then,
I love learning. I think you have to in this field. Like working with someone more experienced and seeing the details that they're looking at is like, I remember learning about like eye catch lights in the eye. And this is from a director, Chris from Raindrop. And he would always be looking for the eye light. And it's like, oh, there's no glow in the eye. Let's get a source here. I'm like, dude, I never even thought that was a thing. Like, that's so nice. But I love it. I honestly love it. And there's so much room to grow, like directing as well, interviewing people, like getting them to that comfortable state, what little tricks and you can use for that, right? So I
Yeah.
think I love this career because you just keep learning. New gear comes out, you just keep learning, and it's just
Yeah.
super fun, honestly.
So, I mean, this is called the Story Arc Podcast because the focus is on story and what that means. And obviously, we've spent a lot of time learning technicality, camera work, DP. But there's like, for every like great DP out there, or 10 DPs, there's maybe like one good storyteller. And I don't want to put them on a pedestal, but I guess I just want to, the purpose of the podcast also is to focus on the power of being a good storyteller. And if you can bring that to the table, you don't have to worry about the gear so much. You don't have to worry about everything. And those things are a lot of fun. It like exercise is a different part of your brain for sure. But I'm wondering if there's a part of storytelling that you feel like is missing in the broader scope of the indie industry that we're a part of, that people are missing when they come to set, and they're just so concerned, so focused with the light and the look that they miss the vibe, the essence of it. Do you feel that at all?
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to like all the YouTube stuff that's out there, and
Yeah.
I like you said, at the end of the day, it's just like, does this make the story better, or are you overthinking it, or are you making over technicalities, right? So yeah, you see that a lot, and like, but the reality too as well is like, depending on the type of shoot you're on, there's time constraints, right? There's budget constraints. There's all these things that come into it that if you just stick to the story and making that as good as possible, whether it's in having the material with all the pre-production you did in order to get the content for that post, it's such a broad space, right, to get that. But like at the end of the day, like I've done, like some of my favorite work has been just me and a camera and like maybe one light, right? Not like whole production crew coming in, but just getting in that, and more in like doc stuff, right? Like getting that person to share something, some very powerful lines that otherwise they wouldn't have had, or it's just, to me, those are like the most powerful moments in like, especially doc stuff, right? Because anything commercial is usually all pre-planned and the whole story arc has already been figured out. Like I've been on shoots where like they literally have the whole edit complete with sounds, AI images and everything, and they already just have the subject sit down, give us this line, cool, we're good. And they just pop that back into the edit, and the edit's complete, so that whole story has been done. But when it comes into like the verite side of this, right, or the doc stuff, it really just comes down to your subject, what they're doing, and what their goal is. Like, to me, that's like my favorite part.
Yeah, because and like I like when things are, well, you would agree. Like we like things that are planned out. Like you don't want to go into something and not have a plan. But there is a beauty of capturing something that is a little, I guess, more realistic, which is random. Like what's going to happen here, and just seeing that there's an excitement to that, and an energy. I know that a lot of times I'm not as stressed when I have the shot list, but I'm usually not like overly detailed. Like I'm not going to spend like hours amount of time, storyboarding. Storyboarding is so overrated in the indie space, like drawing little stick figures and stuff. There is a place for it for sure, but there's so many other tools now that are so much better with shot deck or frame set that you could just explain either the look and the style or the framing of something that you don't have to draw it out by hand. So I feel like shot listing is easy, like medium wide, overhead shot, 2-shot, whatever it is. It's just like boom, boom, boom. And then you have like an idea, especially if you're doing narrative stuff, you don't have time to break away from the chronology of the story. A lot of times, like you can't, like when you shoot like the Baja 1000 or whatever, there's like a bunch of B-roll and you can clip it up however you want to make the story feel good. But when it comes to like a script, you got to follow the blueprints. Like she said this, and then she walks over to the window, and then they walk over here, and then they have an argument. Well, you got to show that time. Like you can't just like, oh, there's a shot of a guy in a bathroom. Like, and oh, it was our cool shot. You got to have a good plan. But I do like the excitement of documentary and the verite style
Yeah, I
of
think,
that.
I mean, even on like the narrative side of it, right? Like on the last short film we did, which was like, there, it was not intended to, but it was a very, there was like an argument between a couple, right? And it dealt with like, some hard subjects like suicide. But at one point, one of the talents just slapped some fruit off the counter and the fruit went flying and broke a window. It was not in the script. But someone called it out. My other buddy, who's a great DP, and he came in as a gaffer, which is great to have someone like that. But he's like, we need to capture that broken window. I'm like, that is an insane call out. Like, yes, let's capture that broken window. And we
Now
just
that it's
grabbed,
broken.
like, now that it's broken, yeah. So we capture that window, and it's like a really powerful moment in the film because it just kind of shows what they are experiencing, right, in this couple, this situation. So I think having that room for the creativity, even if you pre-plan everything, right? Like I've been on many commercials where sometimes like it was like kind of half pre-planned and some stuff just happened and like you said, it was just magic. It was like, dude, like the stars aligned for this shot.
Yeah.
We never thought about this, but it works out even better than what we thought. So having that room for that creativity just makes a big difference.
What about the future for you? Like the big dreams, the big goals. Like we've talked about that a little bit with, we want to go to the next step. But if you could paint the perfect picture in 10 years from now, what would Jesus be doing with your media operations?
I honestly, I don't know. I think it changes like day to day. Like I have my set goals, which like I envision my production house, Outtake Media. Just eventually, I would love to take big narrative projects and high end commercial. Like that's where I'd like to land with. And Cineglow just being a simple lighting, production, like lighting company that either we expand or we're just known in San Diego, LA area, and we're just the go-to guys that have great gaffers and have all the lighting you could possibly need, just to make it easy, right? So I have those set goals. And then on the other side is like the YouTube side, right? Because I mean, granted, YouTube, like I was just watching a video about some like drama going on YouTube, but YouTube is a business. At the end of the day, it is a business. Yeah. It can be a very great creative outlet as well to create your community. But, you're getting revenue. You can sell stuff. So I would love to build something like that. My main goal is film what I want. If I find an insane story, I know everything's taken care of. I can take a week off from everything. Ideally, it sounds so much easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
But I think where I see myself is just shooting what I want to shoot, just shooting projects that move me, shooting projects that I'm passionate about, whether that's a movie, whether that's a commercial, whether it's just a cool video for a small foundation that's trying to grow or something in that. Like, I'd love to get more into the narrative side. I'd love to do more doc within like immigration. Like I myself have dealt with all that stuff. So I see myself growing in that field and just seeking projects that fulfill me.
Yeah. So you want, I mean, I think the trend is is going down that path more and more is, the reason why we started our own businesses, like we thought, financial freedom. And then you're like, oh, well, there's a lot of overhead with gear. And then you start hiring crew and insurance and taxes. And you're like, wow, working for yourself is great. You get to choose your own 16-hour work days. It's awesome.
Man, it's so many hours, like way more hours than I like. And I joke with my wife where I would say like, dude, if I was a plumber, I feel like we'd be millionaires with all the time and marketing I've like put into this business. But I chose the filmmaking side and I feel like it's that extra leg. But once the gears start turning, it's like, it feels like it's just going now. So it's getting those process detailed down and, figuring everything out.
Yeah, it's like the book, The Atomic Habits, about, would you rather have a penny every single day or just like $1 million one time, and a penny every single day compounds to this, insane number. And I feel like when I look at what you've done over the last year is you've done that. You've compounded your habits of social media, networking, also getting the work done, and you're sitting at a good place to go to the next level. Meanwhile, I feel like either a lot of us are A, just getting started, or B, it's the paralysis of analysis. It's the over perfectionism or the comparison game, and we fall short every single month because we're like, well, I want to, and we also like are chasing things in the back of our mind, like, oh, we could do that, we can do this, but no one knows about it. So if you're not speaking, no one's listening, right? And I feel like I'm inspired by you putting your work out there, also your work, but you putting it out there is really inspiring. And so I think it's definitely something we can all learn from.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and I like we said, like the mountain never stops, and like those doubts never stop. Like, am I doing this right? What am I doing here? Like, or like getting reached out for something, like, man, I've never done that. Can I figure it out in time? Right? So it's just doing it. Like at the end of the day, it's just doing it. And yeah, like social media gives me those returns at times, and because there's nothing worse than not having a single call in like 2 weeks. It's like, and like I tell other friends too, where they're like starting to freelance and stuff, and I was like, this is my second time freelancing, because the first time did not work out and I had to go get a job. And it made me realize all the mistakes I did, where yeah, I did like cold emails and stuff, but I didn't build the network. I didn't really make those relationships, didn't really step into film like sets and stuff. And the biggest difference now is, yeah, putting the content out here on YouTube and vertical stuff, social media, whether it is a simple reel and showing some work, or just a simple post, explaining how I lit something, that makes a bigger difference from me to the other people that are not. And eventually, I think this is the future, right? We're not going to go to Google, or we probably already don't do that anymore. Go to Google and find, like a taco shop at times, right? You might be on TikTok and you're like, food. And oh, cool, let's try this spot, right?
Yeah.
Or filmmaking stuff. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's just a grind, and it's a nonstop grind until it starts to kind of roll over.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this episode, and just like your your wisdom, and I think just your work ethic of getting it done, and getting over the hurdle, the mental hurdle of saying, is this valuable? Is there a return on this? And just thinking, you know what, I'm going to do it today, and then not tomorrow, but the next day and the next day and the next day, there may be a return. It's not even a maybe. There will be a return. It's just down the road, and you don't know how it comes. You don't know who it comes or who's going to come, and you don't know how many people are going to come, but it will come. And so you just got to put in the work, get it done, and get over the hurdle of perfectionism and comparison, and just get it done. So I appreciate you jumping on the episode, man, and the podcast, and just sharing your wisdom. And we hope the best for you. And, if anyone's watching this, check out all the channels. His Instagram, his YouTube, TikTok, and all of that. And give Jesus a follow. So I appreciate you taking the time to jump on the podcast today.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. I could talk about this all day. My wife is tired of hearing this for sure. So super happy to talk with another fellow filmmaker anytime.